What's good, YouTube? Just a casual nerd back again with another video, and today as you may know, She-Hulk finale released. So let's you know what? With no further ado, let's get right into it. Yo, this show is bad, and I believe the writers and all the people involved with the Marvel Studios, I think they know it's bad. Okay. Just a quick rundown of what happened to this episode. The beginning of the show, they basically do homage to the original Hulk show, Incredible Hulk show, way back in the day, before a lot of us was even born. But in a way, they kind of making fun of it due to how silly it looks. Of course, it looks silly in today's, by today's standards. But obviously, the show also was silly. It was made today and also in today's standards. But I digress. But anyway, with the show, she started off in jail because she went all Hulk in the beginning, but they kind of just she gets out due to making some type of plea deal. Then after that, she loses her job for some reason, even though they hired her for being controversial in the first place. But yep, she loses her job. After that, even though she's probably has to be making like six figures since she's at a top law firm, but maybe not, because she ends up being homeless and has to move it back in with her parents. Even though she's literally a lawyer, so I guess she didn't have any type of savings. I guess. Moving along, she questions, how she, got to this place. She questions what the audience wants, some kind of vague things there. They decide they're going to find out who's behind Intelligentsia. Her friend, who's really not her friend, helps her, do that by uploading a private video to the internet of her, but, friendship. And they move past that and they finally, set up a meeting, after that. So her and Pug goes undercover while She-Hulk, she goes to see Emil or Abomination for a place to stay because she can't stand being with her parents, who are actually pretty supportive. But she goes to stay with supervillain Abomination because you can't really deal with everything right now, which granted is somewhat understandable. But at this, when Pug goes undercover at this Intelligentsia meeting, they basically have a lot of all guys there who are essentially just anti women, anti anything dealing women, who basically what they're trying to represent is guys on social media and YouTube who tend to not like female related content. Now there are some bad actors in these groups who actually do just have a disdain for women, I'm sure, but generally speaking, the major complaints are that it's those shows is not written well. In modern times, so there are a lot of women-led movies and shows from that's outside the modern era that are really good and is held as some great films. I think the main critique is modern writing, but I think how the writers see it is that these groups just hate women, and I don't think that was honestly a great idea on the writing department to do this, because not only are you alienating your audience, you're not being well, you'll see that they end up being a little self-reflective, but I don't think they're being honest with the critique. Of course, like I said, there are some bad actors in every type of group you have, no matter what. But literally alienating a entire audience who are a large part of the viewing audience, I think that's a misstep in that part. But moving forward, Abomination shows up at this meeting to do a little TED talk, but he's actually not part of Intelligentsia. He was just there to do a speaking engagement. She-Hulk shows up, sees Abomination. Of course, Blonsky gets in trouble for going his Abomination form. She realized that the tech guy was in charge of Intelligentsia, and he injects himself with some of the Hulk DNA. A fight breaks out, which She-Hulk is not a part of, actually. And Titania and Mark Ruffalo's Hulk show up out of nowhere, and Jim Walters, our character, says what we're all thinking, basically what is going on and why are all these people showing up out the blue. And then of course he breaks the fourth wall through the Disney Plus app. And after going behind the scenes, she talks to the writers of the show to figure out why this ending is what it is, because it's going pretty trash at this point, and kind of just very lackluster and almost typical MCU fashion. when it comes to these shows. Then she decides she's gonna talk to Kevin, aka Kevin Feige, but it turns out that Kevin is just an AI robot who is kind of basically just making these shows, or he's determining what the end is going to be for these shows. And honestly, it's probably not too far from the truth, because some of these shows kind of feel like they're written by a robot who just, just putting out content for the sake of content. So probably not too far from the truth. She tells Kevin what type of ending she would actually like to have. So Daredevil having some daytime, getting rid of the extra Hulk plots, and going living happily ever after, I guess. Oh, well, of course they did have to throw in a VFX joke about them not having enough time to, or a budget to be able to do what they needed to do for the show, which has been a big critique of a lot of this recent MCU content. And with the VFX teams recently complaining, I think that joke was probably ill-timed. And if they were doing reshoots, they might have left that one out. I guess it was honest. I will say that it was very honest with itself. So, with all that being said, I believe these writers know that this show is not good. Because by the finale, yes, I understand it was a sitcom, but by the finale, what actually happened? I feel like it was. I feel like nothing led to anything. Yes, I understand a sitcom, but even in sitcoms, yeah, there's episodes that necessarily don't like connect with each other, but there's still an underlying, a moving plot that's leading to somewhere. For this one, I guess she did come to terms with herself being, Jan and She-Hulk, but it went so back and forth. It just kind of almost was like a non-factor. It was like half the time she hated She-Hulk, but when she wanted to get, attention, she would use She-Hulk. So it was, like I said, it was kind of wishy-washy. I understand that, yeah, she got hired because she was a She-Hulk as well, and she wanted to be hired based on her merit as Jen, but then for her social life, she would use She-Hulk for her, her own benefit. But in all honesty, after really getting done and watching the show, I feel like the writers just have like more so of actual disdain for a majority of men and a lot of Marvel fans. Now, I do like that when shows subvert expectations when it comes to the superhero genre. Like, look at The Boys, for example. There's a lot of subversion and kind of make fun of like superhero stuff and actual real life things, but it's done in a way that's still entertaining and meaningful, and it's not pointing the finger. It just it makes sense within the universe. But in this show, like their feelings, like their internal feelings, it just seems so blatant that there wasn't really any artistry in its in the points that it was making. So that really just made it hard to watch. I would say probably the most watchable episodes was the main Daredevil episode, which was episode 8, and probably the first 2 episodes, which I don't think they were good episodes, but I think they were the most watchable. Everything outside of that, it was just not saying you literally cannot watch it, but it was a task to watch. I'll put it like that. Besides those 3 episodes, which that was kind of a task to watch too, but less of a task, I'll say. Because like after finishing watching it, I'm honestly kind of glad that it's over at this point, because even though the episodes were short, it just felt like almost like a waste of time. I'm okay. I watched a lot of things that's not necessarily made for me, and that's perfectly fine, because you can be entertained by things not made for you. But I felt like this show went so out of its way to just try to entertain a subgroup. It was almost made like it was just made for women in LA in their 30s. Now some people will still be entertained by that, and that's fine. But if it went so far in that direction, it almost seemed like it just did not care at all about the MCU fans that were watching the show because they're a fan of the universe. Now, it's like I said, it's perfectly fine to do things that are not in the MCU mold. I'm actually perfectly fine with that, and I think that's something they need to do more. But this one had no type of balance. I felt like it had no type of checks and balances. I kind of felt like the writers could just kind of do what they wanted with the She-Hulk character. And I think this show was actually honestly a missed opportunity. And a side note, I did forget to mention when I was kind of going back over the plot, they did introduce Scar, which is Hulk's son, and I think they introduced him very horribly. He just showed up at dinner or lunch, whatever they were having. I'm like, that could have been a whole. I understand Universal has the movie rights, but once it flipped over, that could have been a whole nother movie, like Hulk or Scar confronting Hulk and saying that you abandoned us, or yada yada yada, something along those lines. It could be like a revenge or anything like that. But he just showed up at dinner, and hey, here's Scar. But going back to the meat of the show, I think another thing that kind of just made the show a little bit harder to watch is they never really attempted to make Jen likable. Like, they try to make her, a victim character and all that, and I'm okay with a character being flawed and them learning how to get through those flaws, but they kind of flip it on his head. They want us to accept her flaws, and everything that happens to her is the fault of everyone around her. And when you make any character like that who doesn't have any type of accountability over, anything bad or wrong that happens to them, it doesn't really make a compelling story, and it doesn't make the viewer actually care about the main character. And again, I know people are going to say it's a sitcom, but again, sitcoms still have compelling characters. The characters are what make you want to watch every week, what makes you want to watch each season, because of the characters involved. Like, say for example, look at The Office. Every episode was something completely different, even though they had some string storylines, but every episode was a different thing that they were going through or doing. But what made you want to watch is the characters that were involved. You want to see how they dealt with it. But for this one, most of the characters was just there. They were just pieces. Even Jen at some points, and her her so-called friend, and then the other characters around them, they were just there. I felt like saying lines. Yeah, and that was it. I mean, like I said, none of my complaints are really about any of the actors involved. I mean, they were just there to do a job. But for this to be a legal comedy, they admitted that they weren't good at writing court scenes, so the legal part wasn't even. I mean, it was there, but it was no gravity to it. A lot of times the president didn't make sense, and they didn't make She-Hulk actually look like a competent lawyer. And then with the comedy part, well, I think it goes without saying it wasn't funny. Yes, I know comedy is subjective, but come on, y'all. I mean, don't get me wrong. I may have laughed maybe throughout the whole entire show, maybe about 4 times, I'll say. Well, the thing is, I can't remember what I laughed at. That's another thing. I really can't even remember the joke, or if it was a joke or just a situational thing. But majority of the time, it just wasn't that the jokes weren't written well. Maybe it was funny to somebody, a small group of people, but just not to me. Let's say that. And for a show that kept saying that this show is not about the cameos, they had like a boatload of cameos, and it really didn't make the show any better. That's the kind of like the crazy part. It didn't make the show any better, unfortunately. And honestly, I say all this, I make a whole video about this because I really did actually want this show to be good. I do think it is the worst MCU Disney Plus show they've put out thus far, and that's kind of saying a lot because a lot of the shows are kind of just bad, and a lot of them actually start out good. I will say that MCU shows, a lot of them, they do start out good, and they just really fall off in the latter half or the ending. But this one, it just never really caught on for me personally. And yes, I'm even including Hawkeye. I think, even though I feel like Hawkeye was a waste of time, I do feel like it was a slightly better show than She-Hulk, and I know that's saying a lot. But honestly, all in all, I think this was a failure in the writing room. Like I said, they were self-reflective in that one scene in this finale. They knew what they were. I really feel like they knew what they were writing just wasn't good, even for them to admit that they couldn't write, a legal aspect of shows. I feel like they were just a little bit in too deep with this particular show. I guess, applaud them for at least trying something different, swinging to try to do something different. But I feel like this was a big swing and a miss. So I feel like there was a big failure in the checks and balances of this show, especially with alienating a lot of the audience. So there was just some things there, and I feel like Disney should just give them a bigger budget to be able to properly do as much VFX and CGI as they could, and give the team enough time to actually do it properly. It shouldn't be a reason that, I know there's a lot of content they got to put out, but it shouldn't be any reason why Disney can't hire a big enough VFX team to be able to, be able to accomplish what needs to be done for these shows. Just give them enough time. I know there's a lot of content, but if they didn't announce things all like 10 years ahead of time or 5 years ahead of time and then start production like a year before or however they do it, I feel like a lot of these problems could be resolved. But there's a lot more I could say about this, but I don't want to make this video too long. I think I'm already past like the 15-minute mark, so hopefully I still got a couple of you guys. But I'm probably want to speak a little bit more about She-Hulk as well as some other things. But you can catch me also on Spotify. I'm actually a co-host for the show called Heaven's Arena. My other co-host is Jinzo Sama. He's not quite on YouTube yet, but he's also a dope artist and a dope commentator when it comes to these things. Sometimes we align, sometimes we're not on the same page, but we show down in Heaven's Arena. Again, we're on Spotify, so you can catch us there, and that's at Heaven's Arena. All right, but where you listen to me for anyway? I'm a casual. Cue the outro.